What's up guys, Lifting here. This is a video guide for my Tanky Cyclone Beginners Marauder build. The build is, as you guessed, optimally played as the Marauder, but it can be played as the Duelist as well. The build scales really well into late game and is able to deal with the highest level maps and bosses. Cyclone is at the moment an incredibly strong skill and will perform very well even with mediocre gear. And this means that you don't have to be rich in order to play this build and be successful. For defenses, this build focuses on having a high life pool, a ton of armor, and using endurance charges together with a cast when damage taking immortal call setup and intelligent juice of a granite flask. The build further utilizes 5 frenzy charges for a nice damage and attack speed increase together with the resolute technique keystone that makes you unable to miss your targets. Alright, enough with the introduction, let me show you the skill gem setup we use for this character. And let's start with the most interesting one, the Cyclone setup. For Cyclone, I recommend the following: Cyclone, melee physical damage, Fortify, and blood magic. Add in added fire if you have a 5 link and faster attacks if you have a 6 link. And the way this works is that both melee physical damage, added fire damage, and faster attacks all directly increase the damage of Cyclone. Blood magic allows you to fuel the cost of the skills through your life pool instead of mana, and Fortify increases your damage, but more importantly also grants you the Fortify buff, which makes it so that every time you hit an enemy you will take 25% less physical damage for 5 seconds. And since you're constantly hitting enemies with Cyclone, this means that this buff have a constant uptime whenever you are attacking or engaging monsters. Fortify is an amazing new support gem for Cyclone. For added mobility and to be able to generate your endurance charges, I recommend the following setup: Leap Slam, faster attacks, endurance charge on melee stun, stun, and blood magic. If you only have a 4 link, you can take out stun until you get yourself a 5 link. With this setup, you will, as you leap slam and hit monsters, generate endurance charges. Each of these charges will give you 4% physical damage reduction, and since this build allows you to have 6 endurance charges up at a time, that means that you'll have 24% physical damage reduction pretty much all the time, except for when Immortal Call procs and eats your endurance charges, but then again that will make you immune to physical damage for that period of time, so there's no need to worry about that. And with that said, for the next setup you will need a 4 link consisting of cast when damage taken, Immortal Call, Blood Rage, and increased duration. I recommend that you level cast when damage taken to level 9, Immortal Call to level 11, Blood Rage to level 12, and while increased duration should be leveled all the way to max level. And this setup will make it so that as long as you have endurance charges up generated by your Leap Slam ability, then whenever you take a big hit of damage, the cast when damage taking skill gem is going to proc and cast Immortal Call for you, thus making you immune to physical damage for a few seconds, as I mentioned before. And this is important as some monsters will deal a ton of physical damage, and this will allow you to get into a safer position. And after your endurance charges have been consumed by your Immortal Call, you should of course Leap Slam and generate some new ones. Cast when damage taken will additionally proc Blood Rage for you, thus automating the process for you. Blood Rage will, when activated, give you a 25% chance on monster kill to generate a frenzy charge and grant you life leech for your attacks. This skill is absolutely fantastic as it will allow you to constantly have 5 frenzy charges up, which greatly improves the damage of your character. The downside of Blood Rage is that it makes you lose 4% of your maximum life per second as physical damage. However, since we will be picking up some nice life regeneration nodes throughout the skill tree, you will be able to completely negate this degen effect. And so to further improve your defenses and automate the cursing and golem summoning process, I recommend linking cast when damage taken with Molten Shell, Chaos Golem, and Enfeeble. And in this case your cast when damage taking skill gem can be leveled all the way to level 18, Molten Shell to level 20, Chaos Golem to level 18, and Enfeeble to level 20. And with this setup, your cast when damage taken will, whenever you take about 2800 damage, proc and cast Molten Shell, Chaos Golem, and Enfeeble. This will greatly increase your armor through Molten Shell, it will reduce the monster's damage against your character through Enfeeble, and automatically resummon your Chaos Golem, so you don't have to do this yourself. And I should note here that Enfeeble at level 20 has a high intelligence requirement. It is not that important that you level it to level 20 if you have issues getting enough intelligence to get that. So if that becomes an issue, just level it as high as you possibly can with the intelligence that you have available to your character. And the last skill gem setup consists of the 2 auras you'll be using, Hatred and Determination, together with Vengeance and Life Leech. Determination will, when active, greatly increase your armor, while Hatred will serve to increase your damage by adding a percentage-based portion of your physical damage on top as cold damage. Vengeance will, whenever you take a certain amount of damage, deal damage to nearby monsters, and linked with Life Leech, it will, whenever it procs, leech back some of the life to your character. It's actually a pretty cool setup. Oh, and if you can make room for it in your build, either through the 6 socket in your chest piece or in an onset ring, then I highly suggest adding in Wall Haste. Wall Haste will grant you a temporarily large boost to both movement speed and attack speed, thus greatly increasing your damage, which can be great for whenever encountering bosses or particularly hard, rare monsters. Alright, so let me show you the skill tree and explain how I leveled this character step by step. And keep in mind that the type of skill nodes that benefits this build is the ones that provide life, endurance charges and armor to make you more tanky. Besides that, you also want some life regeneration to be able to sustain blood rage, and you of course want to increase your physical damage through attack speed, two-handed and axe specialization skill nodes to increase the offensive capabilities for your character. And what you see here is the full skill tree. It is 117 points, and that is with dual sockets taking into consideration. As I mentioned in the beginning of the video, you can also play this build as a duelist. If you want to play it as a duelist, you will simply have to take this pathing and start here. And of course you would then spec out of the Marauder skill nodes over here. This will give you 1 additional skill point, as you won't be able to pick up this one, and the other start node here for the duelist simply isn't worth it. But let me reset the skill tree and show you how I leveled this character as a Marauder. And your first goal is, when starting out, to get a mix of both damage, armor and life to make leveling faster and easier. And the way we're gonna go about this is by first of all to pick up this melee physical damage node here. This is actually a pretty efficient skill node for the single cost point. Then after that, I suggest picking up this life and armor nodes and head into Warrior's Blood. Don't pick up the life regeneration node here, it is simply not worth it for this build. After picking up Warrior's Blood, that will give you 1.8 of life regenerated per second and 20 plus to strength, I suggest picking up Heart of the Warrior together with the other life point. Heart of the Warrior will give you 20 plus to maximum life, together with 10% increased maximum life and 10 plus to strength. After Heart of the Warrior, I suggest picking up Born to Fight for the 4% increased melee attack speed, the 26% increased melee physical damage and the 20 plus to strength. After Born to Fight, I also suggest picking up Butchery over here, that will give you a 20% increased physical damage with two-handed melee weapons, 4% increased attack speed, and 20 plus to strength. After Butchery, I suggest heading down here and picking up Armor Mastery for the 24% increased armor, 3% increased movement speed, which is going to feel great in the beginning while you don't have any movement speed on your boots, and the 0.5 of life regenerated per second. Keep in mind, as I said just before, that life regeneration is important to sustain your blood rage. Armor Mastery and Warrior's Blood already gives us a nice boost to life regeneration, but it's still not enough. We'll be picking up more later on in the skill tree. The next goal from here is to pick up Resolute Technique over here. To get Resolute Technique, we'll pass through this area into Barbarism for 6% increased maximum life, +1 to maximum fire resistances, and 8 plus to fire resistances. And then from Barbarism, we're gonna head up here and pick up Resolute Technique. Resolute Technique will make it so that your hits can never be evaded, however you will never be able to deal critical strikes as well. And while this may sound terrible that you will never be able to deal critical strikes, this actually doesn't matter at all for this type of build, because with a two-handed melee weapon you will be dealing tons and tons of damage. You don't need crits for that, and making it so that you can never miss with your attacks is indirectly a great damage increase. All in all, Resolute Technique is a very good keystone for this type of build. After Resolute Technique, your goal is to move towards the Duelist tree for a mix of offensive and defensive capabilities, and we're gonna do that by heading down towards Master of the Arena. Master of the Arena is going to give you 1% life regenerated per second, 8% increased melee physical damage, 2 plus to melee weapon and unarmed range. This is good for your Cyclone as it will increase the area of effect, and 20 plus to strength. From Master of the Arena, we're gonna head into Bravery for the 24% increased evasion rating and armor, and the 8% increase to maximum life. From here, we're gonna pick up Art of the Gladiator as well for the 12% increased attack speed, 20% increased accuracy rating, which doesn't really matter because we're using Resolute Technique and cannot miss. But also we get the benefit when picking up this notable that we now ignore all movement penalties from armor. And this means that ordinarily when you wear heavy armor you will be slowed down, your movement speed will be slowed down, but when picking this up you will ignore that penalty and will no longer be slowed down. And also we get 20 plus to dexterity, which is good because we need that to level up our skill gems. Next, from out of the Gladiator, we're gonna pick up Destroyer for a very nice 25% increased physical damage with two-handed melee weapons, 5% increased attack speed, and again accuracy, which doesn't matter too much, but still a very efficient and excellent notable for our type of build. From Destroyer, we're going to head down in this direction. We're going to pick up the increased attack speed instead of the 12% increased physical damage skill note here. And it honestly doesn't matter too much which of these skill notes you choose. I like attack speed because I like a fast attacking character, but if you want the 12% increased physical damage with two-handed melee weapons, you can go for that. But we're gonna move from here and into Golem's Blood for the 10% increased maximum life and 1.6% of life regenerated per second. At this point in time, you should be able to sustain your Blood Rage and be able to start to generate your frenzy charges without G-generating too much at least. We will be picking up more life regeneration later on in the skill tree, so if you still cannot sustain your Blood Rage, then you will be able to later on. Oh, and make sure to pick up the last life note here. From Golem's Blood, I suggest you start to spec into two-handed specific damage, and we're gonna do that by moving down towards this area. Then pick up Wrecking Ball for 20% increased physical damage with two-handed melee weapons and 10% increased attack speed with two-handed melee weapons together with the two skill notes here. After Wrecking Ball, I suggest you also pick up Executioner over here for 24% increased physical damage with two-handed melee weapons, 20% increased stun duration with two-handed melee weapons on enemies, and 20% increased damage against enemies on low life. Alright, so your next goal from here is to gain increased area of effect for your Cyclone, some more life, and the last boost to life regeneration. We're gonna do that by heading up towards the Marauder part of the tree again near Resolute Technique, then heading in this direction and picking up Sanctity. Sanctity will give you 20% increased armor, 10% increased maximum energy shield, doesn't really matter with that, and it will give you 1% of life regenerated per second. This 1% of life regeneration should now at least make you able to sustain your Blood Rage. From Sanctity, I suggest you pick up Discipline and Training for the 30 plus to maximum life and 10 plus to increase the maximum life. From Discipline and Training, I suggest you pick up Retribution for the 14% increased melee damage, but also the 5% increased attack and cast speed together with strength and intelligence. After Retribution, I suggest picking up Amplify. Amplify will make your Cyclone have an increased area of effect, and it will increase the damage of your Cyclone as well. After having picked up Amplify and Sanctity here so you can run Blood Rage, I also suggest heading back towards the Duelist tree and picking up Savagery for the +1 to extra Frenzy charges, so that you can now run 4 Frenzy charges. The next goal from here is simply to start speccing into Axe Specialization, and the reason we don't spec into Axe Specialization before now is that you may not have leveled up with only axes. If you have a full lineup of axe weapons to level up with, you can of course spec into the axe specialization nodes early on, but if you haven't, then I suggest waiting until now. So to begin with, we're gonna pick up Slaughter, and the things we're looking for on Slaughter is the 25% increased physical damage with axes and the 10% chance to gain Onslaught for 3 seconds on kill. Onslaught is going to give you both increased attack speed and increased movement speed. It's a really cool effect, and since you're killing so much stuff, you pretty much have Onslaught all the time. From Slaughter, I also suggest picking up Cleaving over here for the 35% increased physical damage with axes together with all the other skill points here, of course. From Cleaving, I suggest picking up Juggernaut down here for the 16% increased armor, 6% increased maximum life, and the 20% increased life recovery from flasks. And don't forget to pick up the last life and armor skill note here. To further improve the damage of our axes, we're gonna head down towards the Duelist tree again, pick this skill note, and then head into Splitting Strikes. Splitting Strikes is gonna give you 26% increased physical damage with axes, 6% increased attack speed with axes, 0.2 of physical attack damage leech as life, and 10% increased life leech per second. And keep in mind that this skill note here will also grant you 0.2 of physical attack damage leached as life, so you're actually getting a decent amount of life leech from this skill cluster here. From Splitting Strikes, I suggest picking up some more life, and we're gonna do that by picking up Constitution over here for 20 plus the maximum life and 14% increased maximum life. From here on, the next goal is to pick up some more life and the remaining endurance charges. We're gonna do that by heading over here, picking up stamina, then heading up towards the template tree, picking up devotion and the last remaining life point. Devotion is also going to give you 20 plus to strength and 3% increased effect of your auras that you cast. After devotion, you should pick up endurance here for yet another +1 to maximum endurance charges, and then head down towards the duelist tree where you're gonna pick up vigor for yet another and the final +1 maximum to endurance charges. This will allow you to have 6 endurance charges up at a time. After having picked up vigor, you simply need to pick up the remaining life nodes in the Scion skill tree. This will, when you have picked them all up, give you a 192% increased maximum life. This is a lot of life, guys, and if you get the belly of the beast that I suggest later, you will be getting a shit ton of life. Let me just put it like that. The only thing you need to do after this is to pick up the remaining jewel sockets. You can of course pick these up earlier on if you have some good jewels you want to level up with, but if not, just pick up the jewel sockets here later on in the game. This will leave you at 117 points, and this is the final build. So before we continue, let me give you some advice in regards to leveling this type of character. First of all, to ensure as smooth a leveling process as possible, it is important that you always make sure to keep your two-handed weapon up to date. To ensure this, I will mention 4 cheap leveling unique items I suggest you buy for your character. But before that, let's talk about which skills you should use before transitioning into Cyclone, because as you know, Cyclone cannot be used straight from level 1, it requires level 28 to use, and it can be obtained from the quest Sever the Right Hand in Act 3 on normal difficulty as a Marauder and Duelist, and even the Scion, I think. And so before you get Cyclone, I highly recommend that you start your adventure by choosing Molten Strike from Targley as the reward from killing Hillark in Lion's Eyes Watch, and then link it with added fire damage which you'll obtain later in Act 1. When you get the quest Atziri's Cadence, the one where you need to kill Merveil, you'll be given the option of picking up Static Strike. Do that and then start using it instead of Molten Strike. Static Strike needs to be linked with added fire damage which you already have and faster attacks that you'll receive later in Act 2. If you have a 4 link, I also suggest buying melee physical damage from the vendor who gave you faster attacks. And from here on, simply use Static Strike until you can get Cyclone. When you get Cyclone, you need to link it with Blood Magic, Fortify and melee physical damage, and from here simply add in the remaining skill gems we talked about earlier on in the guide. If you're curious about where the remaining skill gems can be obtained for the build, then check out the poe.wiki link I have left in the description for a nice and easy overview. And in regards to the unique weapons that I'm going to suggest now, keep in mind that the unique weapons are by no means necessary. You can level up with magic and rare weapons. The unique ones here will simply make your leveling process faster, and they are very cheap. So if you have a small amount of currency you want to invest to make your leveling process easier, then listen up. The first one I suggest is Limb Split. It is a unique axe that compared to your level deals a ton of damage. It requires you to be level 13 to use, and until you reach level 13 then simply use whatever rare or two-handed magic weapon you prefer. At level 17 I suggest you switch from Limb Split to Wide Swing. This axe will again provide you with a nice damage boost and greatly increase the area of effect of Static Strike. At level 33 I recommend picking up Reaper's Pursuit and using it until you can use its older brother, the Blood Reaper. These two axes will carry you all the way until you can get your first endgame weapon at level 58, Comb's Primacy, which I will talk about a bit later on in the video. Limb Split, Wide Swing and the 2 Reaper axes all cost less than an alchemy orb each, which makes them very, very cheap. As a matter of fact, I think I saw all of them available for 5 alteration orbs. And if you're new to Path of Exile, you need to know that to buy these weapons you have to go to poe.trade, then search for the weapon, find a seller and contact him in-game to buy the weapon. And I will leave a link to the website in the description. And again, as I said, it is important to note here that if you're starting a new character without any currency to buy these unique leveling weapons, then it is completely fine just to level up with a regular rare or yellow axe. The unique weapons are merely suggestions if you want to level up with the best weapons for that part of the game. And now the last thing we're going to talk about is what kind of affixes and stats you should aim for on your gear for your character to make your build as powerful as possible. And I should of course mention that being elemental resistance capped is required for this build when you reach Merciless, but when you are resistance capped, these are the defensive stats in priority you need to focus on getting on your gear. First of all, you should get life, and I suggest you try to aim for at least 70 plus on each rare item. Secondly, you want armor. Thirdly, I recommend getting both dexterity and intelligence on your gear, as it will help you level up your skill gems. And lastly, I suggest getting some chaos resistance if possible. Chaos resistance isn't too important, so don't spend a lot of currency to try to get that. It should just be considered as a nice additional bonus. Alright, so to improve your damage, your offensive stat priority is as following, and it is actually quite simple. There's only two things you need to look for here. Number one is increased flat physical damage rolls on both your rings and amulet. Secondly, you should aim for increased attack speed, and this can be obtained on your gloves but also on your rings. And keep in mind that since you're using Resolute technique, there's no need to look for stats that improve your critical strike chains. If you want, you can try to get some life leech as well on your gear. And for this build, you should also get 2 Seething Divine Life Flasks of Staunching, 1 Iron Skin Granite Flask, a Quicksilver Flask of Adrenaline, and either a Ruby, Topaz or Sapphire Flask depending on the content you're farming. And while the build can benefit from multiple unique items, I am in this video only going to recommend 3. The first and most important one for this build is the excellent Combs Primacy Axe. This is the weapon you should aim to get as soon as you reach level 58. This axe will add a ton of damage to your skills, and it has the added benefit of giving you Calling Strike, which basically one-shots any enemy below 10% HP. And this axe may look a little expensive to you at first glance, but since it's fairly common, it isn't really that expensive. You can get this axe for 5 to 15 Chaos Orbs depending on the role of the weapon. And I do of course suggest that if you can afford it, to invest in one with the highest physical damage rolls, but these will of course be the more expensive ones as well. And the great thing about this axe, even though it is obtainable already at level 58, is that it will carry you all the way into high level maps. However, later on in the game, if you want to further improve your character's damage output, I suggest investing into an Atziri's Disfavor axe. This axe will add even more damage, it has faster attack speed, higher physical damage rolls, and it gives you an increased area of effect for your Cyclone together with granting 2+ to targeted support gems. Overall, a very nice axe. But with that in mind guys, you can get some really good rare axes as well. And if you're looking for a rare axe, make sure to get one with high attack speed and very high flat and percentage increases to physical damage rolls. Alright, so the last unique item I'm going to recommend is the Belly of the Beast armor. This armor will grant you a decent boost to armor, but more importantly it will give you a huge boost to your life pool by adding anywhere from 30 to 40% increased maximum life, which is a very significant amount of life. Additionally, it also provides a nice boost to all elemental resistances, and it makes you recharge your life flasks faster, which is definitely not to be underestimated as well. And so for additional unique item recommendations, go to my official Path of Exile forum post for this build, the link is in the description. And lastly, for the Bandit quest rewards, you should help Oak on normal difficulty for the HP, as it scales incredibly well with the ton of HP you get through your skill tree and through Belly of the Beast. On Cruel you should pick up the skill point, and on Merciless difficulty I suggest helping Kratin for the extra frenzy charge. The reason you want the skill point in Cruel difficulty is that you can invest this into a jewel that will outperform either the 16% increased physical damage from Oak or the 8% increased attack speed from Kratin. So get the skill point on Cruel. And that's it guys. Remember, if you have any questions, then the best way to contact me is to join me at my Twitch live stream. The link is below. Otherwise, feel free to ask your questions below in the comments or by going to my forum post on the Path of Exile forums. I will do my best to answer any questions that haven't already been answered in this video. Remember to subscribe for more Path of Exile content. Thank you for watching, and bros, do you even nerd?